Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the latest Greater Birmingham Chambers of Commerce webinar, today being delivered by 1813 Club Chamber member Crowe UK. For those that may not know me, my name is Gary Birch and I'm Head of Relationship Management at the Chamber, so I hope you're all well and keeping safe. A reminder that you can view the latest coronavirus guidance and support on the Chamber website. I'd also like to refer you to our events page on the website, where you can view other forthcoming webinars. The Chamber's delighted that member businesses are offering their support to offer guidance and insight to the business community via this platform. Okay, a little bit of housekeeping before we start the presentation. If anybody does have any sound issues at all, please let us know via the chat mechanic, so we can try and rectify that for you. And similarly, if you wish to raise any questions at all during the presentation, please add them into the chat and we'll look to address those Q&A following the presentation. We'll look to finish around about 10:40 and certainly no later than 10:45. Okay, so enough from me. So tactical tips for maximising short-term cash flow. I'd now like to introduce Jonathan Dudley, Managing Partner of Crowe UK. Over to you, Jonathan.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. I'm not going to talk for 45 minutes because I want this to be as interactive as possible, but I'm going to talk you through a presentation based around largely our two funding flowcharts, which have been available in various forms through our own website for the last 3 weeks or so now, and they're intended as to be a tool to just point you towards might or might not be relevant. Now, before I start, I'd just like to give an apology. We were all prepared to do this and ready to roll, and we've done 2 or 3 of these already. However, the Chancellor overnight decided that he was going to announce some changes. So when we get to particularly the larger scheme information, I'll be somewhat winging it because the information is brand fine new. We've changed the slides this morning, so please bear with me. Okay, so let's get into it then. So in trying to help people through the various incentives or support mechanisms that are in there, what we decided at a very early stage is to try and make it as visual as possible. So we've developed 2 flowcharts, one for individuals and one for entities, corporates, what have you, and we've color coded it. So the lending is basically the blue boxes on our flowcharts. The capital incentive, obviously that's only for corporates, is in red. Grants are in amber, and tax deferrals are in that rather attractive colour of green. How's that all work? Well, let's move on and have a look first of all at the funding support flowchart version 5A. We did have version 4 until this morning, and you will see there that you have the blue loans on the left-hand side in with the red CCCF, and then you've got various grants in amber, and then you've got the tax deferral incentives in green. What you'll also find there is that the light blue writing are direct hot links, and those hot links take you directly to the various parts of our website where there is detail. So at the end of the presentation, you can find a link to actually download those pages, and they're in a form where you can actually get to them and get to the detail where relevant. But the idea is it's a flowchart so you can read through it. And there at the bottom, if you want to have a chat through, there is a link there to a dedicated email address too. So we've got one of those for corporates, and we've got one of those for the self-employed as well, which is slightly different. But we'll get into a little bit more detail over the next few minutes. So first of all, let's look at the CBILS scheme, which stands for Coronavirus Business Interruption Lending Scheme. I call it the lending scheme. It's technically called the loan scheme. However, it does also include overdrafts and invoice financing, as well as conventional loans. Although I have to say the experience has been in the most cases at the moment, what we're seeing in the is mostly loans going through. So this is for businesses turning over up to 45 million and carries an 80% government guarantee. It replaces the old enterprise finance guarantee scheme, and the government will pay arrangement fees and the interest on these loans for a year. Now, what we're seeing is some flexibility on capital repayment, depending on the lender. Some are actually giving a 12-month repayment holiday. Some are giving a few months repayment holiday. Some are giving none at all. And if your lend is under 250,000, personal guarantees are now banned. That's something that I was involved in the negotiation around. But above 250,000, personal guarantees are limited to just 20%, i.e. the 20% that the government aren't securing. And now, it wasn't at first, there is no requirement to use other bank products first. So at this point in time, I'm going to pause because we are going to, and if you'll pardon my attempt at the technology, I've got 2 survey questions. Would it be interesting to see who is involved as to got those survey questions? So question 1, right, if you would like to vote, it's a simple yes, no. I'm interested to know those who are on today have yet applied for a CBILS loan. So I'm going to share the results with you. What we've got at the moment is not many people have applied for one yet, and 64% have said no. Now, I don't know whether that's because it's relevant to individuals or not, or whether businesses are too big, but I'll talk about that in a moment. Okay, so let's ask another question. So obviously there's not that many people applied for one yet, so this could be a very short survey, but we'll see where we go. If you've applied for a CBILS loan, have you seen any money yet? Have a vote on that. Right. Yeah. Okay. And I think that's probably just about everyone on the call who has applied. So I'm going to end the voting. And I'm sharing the results. So that's at 29%. And effectively, nobody's seen any money yet. Okay. All right. So let's get back to the presentation then. So the point that I will pick up with on that CBILS, I'll leave until I get to the tactical tips at this a little bit later. But there have been a lot of problems and a big backlog with the banks processing these. We have seen some of them coming through and money being advanced as late as just this week, in the earliest case in practical terms. But it is taking some money to get some time to get the money out there, because the application process, even though it's truncated, is quite lengthy. Okay, let's move a little bit further forward. This is the new developments that are coming overnight. Above 45 million, you would not qualify for CBILS. You'd have to apply for CLE Bills, which is Coronavirus Large Business Interruption Lending Scheme. For those that are interested, this is for businesses of up to 500 million turnover. So that's a very big chunk of businesses. And again, it carries an 80% government guarantee. It is, in this case, this isn't that you don't get a year's free interest with this one. It's at commercial interest rates. And again, if you're only applying for under £250,000, no personal guarantees are allowed. And lending over 250,000, don't forget the government is providing the 80% guarantee. The personal guarantees are restricted to 20%. Now, if your business is turning over, if your business for loans, sorry, there are two elements to it. For businesses turning over above 250 million, you can borrow 50 million pounds. For businesses of 45 million to 250 million, you can borrow 25 million pounds. Now, although it doesn't really affect a great deal of people, for this CLE Bills loan, there is a top level restriction, which is you're limited to 25% of your annual turnover or 2 times your payroll bill. Now, what we're seeing is that doesn't seem to apply to CLE Bills, so this is a much more wider, open-ended lending scheme for the mid-tier of businesses. We've been waiting for a fortnight for this information to come. We had to lobby to get this at all, because initially this wasn't going to be regarded by the government as necessary, can you believe? But it has now been released overnight. There's still scant information, more information to follow, but applications for that are going to open on Monday of next week. Now, because this one, we didn't have any details, I didn't do a survey on this one at all, so we'll move on. Beyond £500 million, you're then into what they call the CFF, Corona Corporate Finance Funding, which is effectively an investment. It's the government effectively taking paper, but you need a AAA credit rating. And I think somebody made a comment to me the other day that particularly with the way the stock market's taken a bashing, that's pretty much takes most of the FTSE 100 out. So I won't dwell on that one. It's for very, very specific and big businesses. What I thought we'd spend a bit more time on is talking about furlough. Now, the furlough loan covers 80% of salary costs of staff furloughed for at least 3 consecutive weeks. Has to be 3 consecutive weeks. We did lobby for a lower period. It didn't get anywhere. It is possible to furlough share, so you can actually rotate people, but it has to be 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off. And it's based on the salary during February or average income of last 12 months. And it came from the 1st of March, initially for 3 months, although I think most people now expect it to be extended. And a new change, only 2 days old. Originally, it was employees on the payroll at the 28th of February. It's now been advanced to employees on the payroll at 19th of March. Now, there's all kinds of anti-avoidance provisions because their concern is about people sort of jumping on a payroll during the course of a month. So it has to be on RTI at the 19th of March. And we reckon that when it ticks over into April, that date might change again. Some important points here. Workers have to absolutely stop working. If you want to furlough someone, you have to cancel their email address or divert their email address. They shouldn't be really using any office equipment to actually be able to prove that they are absolutely not working in the business. The only thing they are allowed to do, you can allow them with permission to go and work for someone else. You can allow them to undergo training, so long as it's an activity that is not adding value to the business that they're being furloughed from. Directors can be eligible. All of the directors can be eligible. Your role as a director of a small business can be regarded as being an office as distinct from your job of work. You haven't got to worry about people on minimum wage because minimum wage is by dint of reference to hours. And of course, you're actually getting them to stop work altogether. Quite notably at the moment, dividends don't count. Now, put obviously, because it's probably the most asked question I've been asked is, I've got a small business, I pay myself through my dividends. I'd like to furlough myself and I'd like to furlough my dividends. Dividends don't count. It is purely what has gone through your PAYE system. Claim will be through a portal. And again, famously, we've been waiting for that portal to open. That now opens on Monday, presumably at sometime between 8 and 9, when I estimate probably about 500,000 businesses will dive on and try and register people. Now, payment was originally promised by the end of April. If you can get on Monday, and if you can process your application, they believe that you'll be able to get some money, assuming it's approved, within 6 working days. Now, there's a significance of that, which I'll come back to in a moment or two, but it's going to be very important to actually get involved as early as possible. There are issues with holiday entitlement, and all I would say is if you are furloughing people or have furloughed people, it's very important to talk to your HR advisor, be that your lawyer or specialist HR professional, as to exactly what the terms of your contracts are and what the holiday entitlement can be. Actually, I've missed. I'll go back to furlough because there we are. I do have a couple of survey questions. You're so excited, I'm sure. So the first question I've got for the people here, if you'd like to have a vote, have you furloughed any employees at this point? Okay, I'll give it a few more minutes. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? 64% so far of those on the call have furloughed employees. The government are saying that they think about 300,000 UK companies have furloughed people. Of course, at the moment, they won't know. I think they're in for a big shock because I think a very large number of businesses have done that. Okay, I'm going to end voting. There's the results. Okay. All right. So I'll stop sharing those results. We'll close that out. Let's ask another question. Right. Have you prepared to make a grant claim from Monday? So we've got a large number of people who have furloughed employees. Yeah, not that many people have got their act together on it. Yeah, okay. You've still got some. Yeah. I'm going to keep ticking along in a minute. All right. Okay, I'm going to end voting. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Well, those are results. So effectively, of those that responded, there are still some people who haven't prepared to make a grant claim at this point. The significance of that will come in a moment or two, but those that are making plans, I'll make a few comments about that as we go as well. Okay, back to the presentation then. So that's furlough. So what else is available? Well, if you're self-employed, there's a self-employed income support scheme. This applies to just businesses earning more than earning profits of 50,000 or less a year, still capped at £2,500 a month. Very, very similar to the furlough scheme that given, apart from you must have been liable to pay a 2008 completed 2018-19 income tax return. So if you set up in business after the 5th of April 2019, i.e. during the course of the last tax year, you're not eligible. Obviously, that is only self-employed people. It's not people that are operating through limited companies. They are eligible for the furlough scheme, but that's a fairly limited pool of people. And of course, it does create a bit of a problem for people that are recently set up in business during 2019. Onto a few other minor grants now that were announced right at the start of the lockdown, which were probably exciting at the time, but a little less relevant now with all of the loan schemes that have come on since then, and of course the furlough scheme. If you had to put people onto onto SSP because they got the virus, or they were isolating at the time. Although if you got certain people that are isolated now, if the people are isolated, they get SSP. If they are if they are safeguarding, they can be furloughed. The SSP is a smaller sum of money, of course, and it means that entities with less than 250 employees can claim SSP, and the individuals can claim that SSP with no waiting time. There's a couple of property grants. This has been a lifeline for some micro businesses. Certainly there's a 12 months rates relief for hospitality, retail and leisure businesses formally, but other entities, our advice really is to contact your local authority. We're finding that most local authorities, even if you aren't in hospitality, retail and leisure, are being quite amenable, but that's probably because they're obviously just collection agencies for the government, and they've probably been encouraged by the government to forgive rates relief, at least during the period of lockdown. It's certainly worth a phone call. But hospitality, retail and leisure businesses also get a grant of up to 25,000. That's should be automatic, comes from the local authority. And other entities will get a £10,000 grant so long as you get small business rate relief or rural rates relief. On to the green section now, the tax deferrals. First of all, the VAT. The VAT payment that you make normally in quarter to June, you shouldn't make in a quarter to June, but the important thing to note here is if you pay your VAT by direct debit, you absolutely must cancel your direct debit. Revenue and Customs can't do that, so you have to do it. And unfortunately, if they take money, they won't give it you back. So it's very important that you do that. But that means that you effectively get a loan until next March of your VAT payment that you will pay then. It's payable on the 31st of March, and that's interest free. Likewise, if you owe some corporation tax, you owe PAYE. And of course, if you owe some PAYE, but you've got some SSP relief built into that PAYE, you can defer that and get time to pay that. And also, if your business is large enough to make quarterly payments, what we call QIPs, the quarterly payments of corporation tax, they're also time to pay or suspension. And if you do have a self-assessment liability due in July as a payment on account for the current tax year, based on your last year tax bill, that is now deferred, so everything will be paid on the 31st of January next year. Now, survey question here. The last one, actually. Have you applied for, it's called TTP, time to pay? Give it a little bit longer. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'm going to end the voting there. I'm going to show you the results. That's interesting, isn't it? There's 43% of those that have voted haven't applied for time to pay at this point. That is also quite significant for reasons that will become apparent in a moment, but we are nearly there and ready to take questions. So, moving on to some financing issues and why you might want to be considering what you're doing. The first thing to consider is April. April is a key month. During the month of April, businesses are either have lost or are losing income, particularly in businesses that are invoice discounting or factoring. You get more money available to you when your sales increase, but unfortunately, if your sales increase or as in some cases drop off a cliff, you've got no income coming in. but you've been encouraged to pay out your wages for March in full or at 80%, but you won't be now seeing the furlough grant until at the very earliest a week on Monday. Now, by a week on Monday, you should have actually paid your April salaries if you're paying by backs, and that's at the very, very earliest. So the first thing is if you aren't absolutely ready with paying, making your grant claim for furlough, be very ready and get in quick, because there will be a lot of people doing it, and that's going to start your 6-day clock. In the meantime, the government think that you've had a forgiving of your VAT for a period of time. You can apply for time to pay. We know that some people haven't applied for time to pay, so therefore that's what's there to fund your cash flow in the meantime. That's kind of fine, isn't it? But what you're only just about at this point in time now be paying your PAYE normally anyway. And your VAT in some cases is probably not even due yet. So actually there's a real cash credit crunch at the moment. And what we're seeing is, and if I go back to the CLE Bills applications, quite a few people have applied. Nobody's seen any money yet. It is now coming on stream, but it's coming on stream quite slowly. And everyone's in the same boat. So the other difficulty you've got there is you've got credit referencing agencies who are getting extremely nervous and they're cutting credit. So actually you're not collecting money off your customers from sales you've done from several months back. So actually you can have a reversal. So there really is a brewing cash crisis here, and I would urge anyone that's on the survey today that hasn't considered doing a time to pay application, because actually I will say you have to spend an hour on the phone, but Revenue and Customs are very understanding and they will help you. If you've got the information available to you, you should do that. If you haven't considered and given some thought as to whether you should be making a CLE Bills application already, you should be doing now. And you absolutely should be ready to be making your furlough claims now. There's a lot of uncertainty around. The speed of turnaround is nowhere near what it could or should be. The only good news is for those of you in limited companies, we managed through some lobbying to get the wrongful trading rules suspended. So actually, there's quite a lot of businesses at the moment, are technically insolvent. That means that a business is unable to pay its bills as they fall due. However, for how long? And actually, it's only suspended. It's only suspended for businesses that are insolvent because of coronavirus. I can see that that's going to be a fun day for lawyers actually proving or trying to disprove or prove whether a business has actually failed and whether the directors are liable because of coronavirus or some other underlying thing. So I wouldn't rely on that completely. Some tips. Really, all non-essential payments needs to stop immediately. Any essential payments that you make, any large payments you make, negotiate. Yesterday I was talking to someone who was paying a large bill to a membership organisation. It wasn't the Chamber, but I'm sure Chamber will talk to you. But a large membership payment, and they managed to negotiate a large membership payment to be paid monthly rather than one big hit all at once. Because the more cash you can get around you at this point in time, we know that this is going on for another 3 weeks. It could be longer. Even if everyone does go back to work in 3 weeks' time, it will dribble back to work, and there won't be sort of like an immediate switch on. It will work its way back up again, and there will be a shortage of cash for several months to come. Put a call into your local council if they haven't already been in touch with you to see what they can do with your rates. If you're renting, talk to your landlord, particularly if you are sort of fairly advanced in your lease. Your landlord might forgive you a bit of rent in return for or defer your rent in return for signing up a longer lease for when you're back. Be absolutely ruthless on your credit control. You really got to press your credit terms and don't be sucked into just being nice to everyone. Have all of your financials up to date. You know, for all of these applications, even for time to pay, they could well ask for a cash flow. They'll ask for management accounts. They'll make sure that you've done your last financial accounts. That, you know, there have been deferrals put in place to so that you don't have to file your accounts by the due dates, but that doesn't mean you still aren't best advised to have them prepared. You really need, in ideal situation, to have a flexible forecasting model that you can keep updating and changing as things go on, and a 13-week cash flow at the very least as well, to demonstrate that you have an ability to trade and not run out of cash. And then what I've also been seeing as a practical example is if you've got property or assets on hire purchase, talk to your asset financiers. That's another monthly payment that's going out. If you think about it, you bought them off them on hire purchase. They will, and they will do deals with businesses that will give you a little bit of a holiday on repaying your monthly payments, because they don't want the asset back. Really, what they really want is for you to pay off your credit terms. So talk to them. Again, it doesn't hurt to make a phone call. Last but by no means least, it's not on this slide. Bearing in mind that what we now know, the furlough money is going to take some time to come on board. I would recommend that when you do make your furlough claim, make sure that when you've entered the amount on the portal, you keep some kind of record, or you take a PDF of your application claim at the very least, or print it off. And then immediately, if you do find that you've got cash flow to fund during the period of time to pay your April payroll, that effectively is a piece of paper that you can go to your bank. And I did talk to a director of Lloyd's actually, but I'm sure that they'll apply to other banks. Is if you've got a furlough claim in place, that is lending collateral in the short term that will help you pay your April payroll. But you need to open the conversation up with your bank manager and make sure you've got the evidence saved. Other things to consider. Just think about when your customers are going to go back to work. Some OEMs are already talking about going back to work. There is no restriction actually on working. The social distancing rules apply, but certainly if you're in the manufacturing trade, there is an encouragement of being there, of being at work or continuing production. So keep in touch with them as to what their dates are. Your suppliers, you need to keep in touch with them too as to what, when they're restarting. And there's a lot of persuading going on at the moment. If you're in a business that's unionized, you need to talk to your trade unions, particularly about social distancing in the factory and breakout areas and what you need to do. You might need to get some personal protection equipment, and obviously that's a hot property at the moment. If that's the case, before you go back, you need to source that personal protection equipment, as particularly bearing in mind it's in short supply. Think about people's holiday entitlements. You need to actually sort of think about when people are back to work. Do you actually need to negotiate with people as to when they need to take their holiday? Because what you don't want to be in a situation is when is as soon as they're back at work and you want them producing, suddenly they're going to take a fortnight's holiday. And last but by no means least is the concern about cyber. There's all kinds of horror stories going on at the moment. The bad guys are really pushing hard on cyber security, on cyber attacks, and particularly I'm concerned about furlough. If you're planning on doing your own furlough claim and you're doing it from home, just remember the data that you will require, which is personal data to your employees. And actually, if you lose that, that could be absolutely devastating for your business. It could, because you could end up with a fine that could more than bankrupt your business. It could be have very serious implications. So be very careful out there. I've rattled through. I might have gone over a little bit long because of the changes to CLE Bills, but that is me. And I think I'll hand back to Gary now, who probably is going to control some questions.
Yes, hi Jonathan, thank you very much for that insight. I think you can take a well-deserved drink now from that very large mug of coffee you've got. Hope everybody found that insightful and informative. We have got a couple of questions that I can see that have come through, both from Phil of Pearson. Jonathan, the first is it worth applying to more than one bank for a CBIL loan? And then Phil follows that with, do I need to apply for VAT deferral?
Okay, I'll take those in order. In theory, so is it worth applying to more than one bank for a CBILS loan? In theory, yes. And the government are very, very keen. I've been talking to Bays myself, because initially the banks immediately took up the view that they were only going to lend CBILS loans to their existing customers. The banks were then had their fingers or their knuckles wrapped on a number of occasions over the last 3 weeks by the government, and they've said, no, that isn't the idea. We want you to consider everyone, and they should be able to shop around. So, and there are over 40 available financial institutions that you can get CBILS from. In practical terms, it's more likely that you will get a better deal and a quicker deal from your existing lending bank. But the point is if you're preparing the package to apply, it doesn't hurt to apply to another lender at the same time. You might have some issues around secondary security within the corporate though. So for example, if you've got an existing debenture against the company in the hand of one bank, it takes time and money to rest that and move it to another bank, because just because these CBILS loans don't carry or have limited personal guarantees, there is still value, one would hope, in any existing debentures that a business has got or provided to its bankers. So yes, do it. I certainly wouldn't be telling your main lending bank that you're doing it to more than one, but it's worth trying. But you will, if you need the money rapidly, you're more likely to get it quicker from your existing bank. Second question, do you need to apply for VAT deferral? No, you don't. It should come automatically. But what doesn't come automatically, and I'll repeat, they tried to do it, but again, the banking system wouldn't allow them to. If you have a direct debit, you must cancel it. HMRC cannot. They've tried. The banking system won't let them. So it will be automatic so long as you're not on direct debit. And if you are on direct debit, get off direct debit, and then it's automatic. And I can see there's another question come in here, Gary.
Yeah. Thanks for those answers there.
Anyway, I hope Phil, that's answered your question. But offline, if you want to contact me, by all means, I can do. I can have a chat with you.
Latest question to come through, Jonathan, is from Andy Skinner, which states, given the need or wish to keep active, can furloughed staff work for someone else? For example, on a farm picking crops.
Under most employment contracts, there's a restriction on somebody working for somebody else. But of course, subject to a waiver of that contract, there is nothing wrong with a furloughed member of staff from one company actually conducting temporary work for a third party, be it earned or unearned. But it has to be it has to be agreed with the employer, because most standard employment contracts preclude that. There's nothing wrong from a furlough point of view.
Thanks, Jonathan. So I hope that answers Andy's question. I can see that Phil has responded to thank you, and your answers obviously proved to be helpful for him. I'm conscious of time, so fingers crossed we may get at least one more question come through. Probably worth stating at this point that following the webinar, which has been recorded, then the link will be shared with all attendees before I think them being made public, but all attendees can then obviously listen to again and review the presentation from Jonathan and obviously answers to the questions that have been asked. So let's just see if we get any other question come through. Otherwise, Jonathan, anything at this stage
well, what I was
you want to finish with?
As a filler, just to say, I mean, if I get the advert in, I suppose we've got a team of people who are actively helping businesses making CLE Bills applications as we speak. We've had some success already. By all means, you can contact us if you're interested in doing that. Obviously, we can help with any of the other provisions, but from Monday, we will be running a dedicated support service, which is sort of on a cost basis for people wanting assistance with furlough. Revenue and Customs already said that they aren't really going to have a helpline or what have you. It's going to be purely electronic. And what we're also doing is we're providing a secure process for the application for the furlough grant. To do that, you need an agency agreement and what have you, and you have to put that in place. But the most important thing is if you've already furloughed your, a lot of your staff, and you need to do it, don't just think your payroll person's going to be able to do it, because it's probably not in their skill set. But you are going to need access to that payroll information. And I just would reiterate, the way we are going to use it is by using a military grade secure portal, because you're transferring personal information which under the Data Protection Act carries turnover multiple based penalties. And we all remember the scare stories of the GDPR. That this is an absolute diamond exercise. So it really isn't something that you sort of like email the mate that that knows a few numbers down the pub, from down the pub when we used to go down the pub. Do you remember that? It really is something that needs doing properly. And I just urge everyone, just be very, very careful with that data.
Thank you, Jonathan. It doesn't appear as though any other questions have come through, and noting the time now, hopefully your insight has proved educational for all those in attendance. Like I say, everybody will get the link thereafter to review, and we'll have your details. So I think if I just look to finish now, Jonathan, to say thank you to you and your team for preparing the presentation, thanking everybody for attending, and to all, keep well and stay safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you.